Hi everybody, I'm Josh Constine here at TechCrunch Disrupt New York 2013. I'm here with Alexander Asseily, who's the founder and one of the chairman and president of State, a new opinion network that launched today on stage at Disrupt. So State allows you to share your opinions about any topic, and instead of it just sending those opinions to your followers like on Twitter, it pushes them to other people that are interested in the topics, and it surfaces them in many other ways. So it means you don't have to be famous or have a massive audience in order to get your voice heard. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how did you come to found this company and leave Jawbone? Because you were the founding CEO of Jawbone.
Yeah. Well, so I'm very fortunate to still be involved with both companies, but for a variety of reasons, about 2-3 years ago, I both wanted to move back to London and also set up a new company, and it was just felt right to do that. So Jawbone's still very close to my heart, and I spent a lot of time in California. But the motivation for State is, I would say, linked back to like where I grew up, which is the Middle East, and the realization that the asymmetry in how information is distributed has dramatic effects on like the livelihoods of people. And what I mean by that is, if a very small number of people get to decide what everyone talks about, then they can kind of decide in which direction like society is going to like move. And if that's not good for people, it can be very destructive. It can be very destructive. So the question is, could we create a system that could level the playing field so that the nodes of distribution, the nodes of discovery were no longer people or organizations, but instead were just ideas?
So I feel like there's this huge problem right now on Twitter. Because there's an unfiltered feed, people sort of get to a limit of how many people they can follow, and they just stop following new people. Like, I've hardly followed new people in like 6 months. You know, I maybe swap out a few people here and there, but I'm not making drastic changes. And I feel like that makes it really difficult for new users to gain any audience. Like, if you are an early adopter who got on one of the suggested user lists, or you don't have like a blog like TechCrunch helping you out get followers, like how do you ever get any people? Do you see this as a big problem? Do you think people are still able to gain followers on Twitter, or has that really slowed down?
It's a very good question. So there are some people who think that, with few exceptions, that there was a moment in time in the growth of Twitter where if you joined and you were active and you were relatively intelligent in what you talked about, that you would just ride the wave of like follower growth. And a number of celebrities captured that. A number of the founders of companies in the Valley captured that wave. People who may or may not have gathered those followings otherwise. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. The trouble is that there's an information theory problem with Twitter, which is that the amount of content that is produced by people collectively exceeds by a significant order of magnitude the amount of time those same people have to consume it. The amount of time we have to consume is staying the same. We have 24 hours in the day. Even if we decide to sleep 6 hours instead of 7, we're still like the total aggregate amount of time we can take to linearly consume stuff is just not changing. But people around the world are expressing themselves. The only way of dealing with that is to create a way of synthesizing large amounts of content into a singular summary of some kind. And what that requires is a level of structure in the content itself so that you can do that.
So I think State is an impressive job of doing that. After you post something, beyond it just being pushed out to people that aren't just your followers, it actually aggregates other opinions about the same topic. Because it's all about structured data, you choose a specific topic, you select a topic from a drop-down menu that you want to talk about. It's able to gather all those opinions together in ways that Twitter and Facebook can't really. And by doing that, it shows you the sort of zeitgeist of what people think about a certain topic. Now, what I'm really fascinated in is like, what does that do to the world when that data is surfaced? Because I know you guys want to build APIs to be able to do that. What happens when suddenly the world can see everyone's opinion about a certain topic? Like, how does that change product development or the rest of the world?
Great question. It's about having a feedback loop that's effective, right? We have feedback loops in the world today. Like if a company, let's say Jawbone, for example, really messes up on a product, there is a feedback loop through the media, through customer service, to figure out that people are displeased or pleased or whatever, or even feedback on things that they would love in the product. The feedback loop on the whole, though, is pretty inefficient, right? Because you might get the idea that people are complaining, but you don't really understand exactly why. And it's not very easy for them to complain. In other words, by the time they have complained, they're like pretty angry about it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just a bit of a shame because there's a huge resource of untapped opinion. So the question is, what happens if most people, most of the time, can actually express their views on the things that they are forming those views on, and that the audience that is appropriate for those views gets that information, whether it's a government, a company, an influencer, a celebrity, whatever it is, right? What ends up happening is we as a society end up having like a mirror put up to us. So we're in tune with the reality of what's going on rather than deluding ourselves about what's actually going on. Just like a mirror does. Like a mirror will tell you very quickly whether you've got like chocolate on your face. You might convince yourself that you don't if you didn't have the mirror. And it's the same thing in society. Like society deludes itself constantly about stuff. And I think that there's also funny things, right? For example, as people start to express their views, you can start to realize that people are like really cynical between like 10 and 11 a.m. and then they become much more acquiescent in the afternoon.
You gotta get that lunch in.
You gotta get the lunch in. And then it turns out there isn't
Then I'm nice again.
Right, then I'm
a
nice
guy
again.
before that.
And there's a lot of things we can learn from that. People talk about it as big data, but the reality is that data is only as interesting as the impact it can have. So the idea with the API, which you mentioned, is can the aggregated intelligence of people's opinions and the insights that can be derived thereof be accessible to third parties to come along and build better services? The idea that state as an organization can go off and think about every possible permutation of what that resource could be used for is ridiculous. Like we are going to be, it is going to be a community of developers that does that.
Cool. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what will happen. I want to see people look at their states and see, oh, our product is deficient in these areas and it works great in these areas. So let's maximize those and fix these other problems. And even see that coming to like politicians and saying like, this is the legislation that everyone hates about me. Here's the one thing that I did really wrong, and like this could have cost me the election if I didn't realize it. And so here's how I can be more responsive to my constituents. Here's how I can take that public opinion and use it not just as big data as a concept, but in a practical and actionable form to really make the world better. And so I'm really excited to see how State goes. It's launching today. You guys can go check it out at state.com and get an early invite, or check out our article on TechCrunch to read more about how the product works, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much, Joel.
Thanks again for coming in.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.